The Pacific stretched endlessly, a steel-blue expanse streaked with sunlit waves. Rising from its heart, the arcology of Nereus towered like a crown of glass and carbon lattice. At its base, vast breakwaters churned the surf, channeling kinetic energy into humming turbines. Families lived inside translucent spires that pierced the clouds, their foundations anchored to the ocean floor with cables thicker than bridges. It was morning on Earth, the year 2239, and the world moved with the confidence of hard-won peace. Children in bright polymer jackets zipped into submersible pods shaped like silver manta rays. The pods slipped beneath the waterline and streamed toward schooling domes nestled in reef caverns. Dock workers, their sleeves rolled, guided freight along magnetic slips as gulls circled above. Inside the Arcology's council tower, the tide schedule was being updated while offshore trawlers sang coded songs about harvest yields. It was, for once, ordinary. Then the sky tore open. A shadow moved across the upper decks, blotting the sunlight. From above, a crystalline craft descended, tripodal and vast, its legs folding into spires that shimmered as though made from fractured mirrors. The air trembled. Waves struck the breakwaters in unnatural rhythm, pulled by its gravity tide. The ship did not land. It hovered, alien and absolute. A broadcast surged across every channel, visual, auditory, haptic. The image that formed was of a being that seemed sculpted from shattered glass. Shards of translucent matter hovered loosely around a core that pulsed with blue fire. The envoy's voice was not spoken, it resonated, a chorus of grinding glass, painful and clear. We are the Council Envoy Zadran. Earth, you stand at the edge of decision. Your neutrality cannot persist. 3 paths open, one must be chosen. Refusal is not permitted. Screens across the arcology lit with symbols not human, spirals, contracts, bronze gilded spears. The ultimatum unfolded in 3 parts. Bronze-armored giants appeared in holograph. Their warforms gleamed with etched scars, shields as wide as buildings strapped to arms thicker than hydraulic presses. Behind them, banners rippled, banners made not of fabric but of resonance fields that twisted light itself, warping targeting systems in the display. Their voice thundered, "We are the Cadrim Phalanx. We defend those who bow. Join us, and no starborn predator shall ever pierce your skies. Our gravity-sheer rams will guard your borders. Our resonance banners will blind your foes. But your children will march in phalanx lines. Every voice will follow command. Obedience is survival." The image froze on ranks of bronze warforms, each identical, each faceless. The holograph shifted to a dark hall lined with glowing contracts, endless streams of sigils circling like shackles. Figures in segmented suits bowed not as warriors but as auditors. Behind them floated colossal vacuum harvest rigs, siphoning gases from giants, their arms harvesting moons as though they were ore. A softer, persuasive voice carried through, "We are the Dravith Combine. Trade is destiny. Submit, and your world shall prosper in our lattice. We offer wealth, endless exchange, acceleration of your industries. Your oceans will become ports, your children shareholders of greater markets. But know this, debt is eternal. Labor binds flesh. The collars of contract weigh heavier than iron. Prosperity is servitude." On the screens, laborers staggered beneath glowing sigils. Each contract sealed their bodies with light. The final vision was serene. Pale figures stood in halls of translucent lattice. Their faces were hidden by masks shaped like prisms, every movement precise, every breath synchronized. Around them glowed spires of data, towering higher than mountains. Their speaker's voice was calm, almost gentle. "We are the Illyric ascendants. We do not enslave. We enlighten. Join us, and your minds will ascend beyond flesh. Our neural lattice engines will expand your cognition. Our cognitive siphons will weave your memory into the eternal. No fear, no loss, only clarity. The price is simple: your culture, your myths, your memory, these will be surrendered to unity. Knowledge demands identity. The mask lifted briefly, revealing no face, only a lattice of thought. The screens went dark. The crystalline envoy pulsed once, then faded. Inside the council chamber of Nereus, Earth's leaders sat in silence. President Marisol Vega, broad-shouldered and steady-eyed, leaned forward at the obsidian table. Beside her sat Admiral Reese Calder, uniform crisp, jaw tense. To his right, Dr. Yara Mendel, chief scientist of the Arcology Network, tapped restless fingers on a pad. Dr. Hamid Kavari, anthropologist, kept his hands folded, his dark gaze unreadable. Vega broke the silence first. 3 gilded cages, all polished, all poisonous. Admiral Calder's voice was iron. The phalanx offer defense in exchange for chains. They'd strip us of choice. Every child born into a uniform. Mendel frowned. The Combine is worse. They see us as assets, contracts etched into skin. That's not trade, that's slavery marketed as profit. Kavari spoke softly. The Ascendants strip identity itself. To surrender memory is to surrender existence. Humanity would vanish, archived but no longer alive. Vega nodded once. So neutrality. Neutrality, Calder echoed, is what they warned was impossible. Kavari leaned forward, tone grave. To them, children are vectors. The phalanx sees soldiers, the Combine sees labor, the Ascendants see raw mines to harvest. To us they are futures. That is the line they cannot comprehend. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the low hum of wave turbines. Mendel exhaled sharply. We've been building quiet contingencies, orbital weather calibration arrays, atmospheric regulators. Nothing they'd suspect. Calder glanced at her. You mean defenses hidden as climate infrastructure? Vega's eyes flicked toward the window, where children's submersible pods still glided into the depths. Our greatest assets are hidden too. The Council does not understand what it means when humanity protects its young. The chamber doors hissed. A holograph shimmered in the center of the table, the envoy's shard body reappearing, its glass edges trembling. Earth, choose! President Vega stood, her voice carried like a hammer. We will not march as soldiers of obedience. We will not sign away our labor. We will not erase our memory. We are sovereign. We will remain free. The shards around the envoy shivered violently, blue light flashing like blades. Neutrality is extinction. The Council will take what you will not yield. The extraction will begin. The image shattered into static. Outside, the crystalline ship rose, scattering light across the ocean. Children's pods slipped below the waves, unaware of the storm now moving toward them. Above, the orbital arrays glinted in sunlight, weather calibrators, yes, but something more. Waiting. The hush of intrusion had passed. Earth had spoken, and the universe had been warned. 5 years passed after the envoy's warning, and to the galaxy it seemed Earth had gone silent. The Pacific arcologies no longer answered Council summons. The Belt colonies sent no envoys to interstellar markets. Kepler 91b, storm-racked and marginal, faded from political chatter. To outsiders, humanity appeared chastened, perhaps cowed into irrelevance. The truth was different. Beneath the surface, in vaults of basalt and steel, Earth was building. The first project began with orbital climate mirrors. Publicly, they were humanitarian marvels, giant reflective sails that moderated heat, bent storms, and softened droughts. But their cores were latticed with superconducting coils. At command, they could align into solar lances, focusing sunlight into beams hot enough to carve a warship in two. Farmers saw them as salvation against failed crops. Only a handful of admirals knew the mirror's secondary purpose. In the medical halls of Nereus, refugee doctors brought therapies scraped together on dying worlds. One serum originally intended to help miners survive toxic atmospheres was refined by Earth scientists into something else. It hardened bones, accelerated muscle recovery, and trained the inner ear to resist disorientation. The result was the Resilience Serum. Pilots dosed with it could endure turns that would black out other species, twisting through maneuvers that sensors called impossible. The price was steep, agonizing training regimens and shortened lifespans. Volunteers lined up anyway. Even cargo was reimagined. The ungainly atmo-kites, once used to haul freight through thin atmospheres, were re-engineered into modular stealth craft. Their sails folded into jagged patterns that bent scans. Engines were quiet, almost invisible in the void. They could be freight one week, warcraft the next. A farmer shipping grain from Mars might, in truth, be an officer ferrying weapons in a vessel ready to unfold into attack formation. Most elusive of all were the quantum ghost relays. Officially, they were weather stations that tracked orbital storms. Secretly, they were woven into a lattice of entangled nodes. When activated, they could throw phantom signals into enemy networks, conjuring fleets where there were none and erasing real formations from view. To build them required silence, for once revealed their trick would be countered. They waited like mines under calm water. Humanity's arsenal grew not as a parade of dreadnoughts, but as hidden knives, each cloaked as tool or shelter. Resolve hardened not just from invention, but from testimony. In the third year, a transport limped into the belt carrying survivors from Kepler 91b. Among them was a boy no older than 12, named Derek. His lungs rattled with every breath, scars across his neck where glowing bands had once been fused. When the council asked for volunteers to recount their lives, the boy stepped forward before President Vega and the entire Ecology Council. His voice shook, but his words landed like iron. The Dravith put collars on us. They glowed when we slowed down. If you stopped working in the methane pits, the band got hot. It burned. We were told the contracts said we agreed, but I never signed anything. My little sister worked until her chest bled, and when she fell, they dragged her away. I don't know where she is. The chamber fell silent. Derek coughed, blood in his palm, but he kept speaking. They said Earth would join soon. They said we'd all wear them. Please don't let them. No strategist could have spoken more clearly. The Combine's cruelty was not theoretical. It was carved into a child's ribs. His words carried across colonies and into ships. Broadcasts of his testimony ran through underground channels. It became the story Earth carried in secret, that the galaxy's empires did not see children as sacred but as property. It was Dr. Hamid Kavari who crystallized the truth. At a closed session of the Nereus Council, he laid out the psychology behind Earth's defiance. For the Kaedrim, obedience is sacred. For the Dravith, profit is sacred. For the Illyric, knowledge is sacred. But for humanity, what is sacred is not abstract. It is the child. Protecting the young is the line we do not cross. If threatened, humans abandon calculation. They do not stop. They do not surrender. Every war in our history proves it. He looked around the table, his voice even. The Council cannot understand this. To them, children are resources. To us, they are futures. They cannot imagine a species willing to risk extinction for the protection of its young, but we can, and we will. The room was quiet. Vega only nodded, face like stone. The moral line had been drawn, preparations spread across the system. Colonies hardened themselves into fortress nodes. Lunar foundries buried rail batteries beneath regolith. Ice haulers in the Kuiper belt were retrofitted with disguised missile hatches, waiting to bloom fire from frozen husks. Families across the belt drilled in evacuation corridors, practicing silent departures into hidden shelters. Children learned to navigate subsurface tunnels as naturally as playgrounds. It was not the armament of an empire, but of a people who intended to survive an empire's assault. Nothing paraded, everything hidden. In the 5th year, silence ended. 3 fleets, Phalanx, Combine, Ascendant appeared in concert above Kepler 91b. Their signal cut across human channels in one voice, translated into a cruel harmony. Earth has delayed too long. Correction is required. Hundreds of your children have been taken from Kepler, secured as wards of the Council. Submit to integration or they will vanish into service. This is not cruelty. This is law. Neutrality is failure. Choice is over. Footage followed, transports lined with young faces, frightened and silent, each collar glowing faintly around their throats. The transmission reached Nereus Council within seconds. In the chamber, Admiral Calder's hands tightened into fists. Mendel's eyes burned with fury. Kavari sat utterly still. President Vega rose slowly, her voice steady as steel. "They took our children." She looked each of them in the eye. "They chose war." The words rippled through the chamber. A decision had been forced. The quiet years were over. The Council Grand Fleet arrived in silence, breaking into real space above Neptune's orbit like a wall of steel and fire. Bronze-clad spear cruisers of the Cadram Phalanx anchored the center, their resonance banners already shimmering. Vast lattice frigates of the Illyric Ascendants drifted behind, prisms of cold light. Around them orbited the Dravith Combine's harvest ships, their bellies glowing with the power of rigs built to strip planets bare. Three empires, united in disdain. Their expectation was simple panic. They believed humanity would scatter into disorganized resistance as others had. Earth was to them a provincial backwater, a stubborn child now to be disciplined. The Council's fleets had toppled civilizations far older, their doctrine polished by centuries of domination. Yet when they cut the void and held station, there was no panic. Neptune's stormed face turned beneath them, a blue giant unaware of the fleets at war above its skies. Admiral Reese Calder stood on the command bridge of the carrier, resolute, eyes steady. Around him, the calm hum of readiness filled the air. He waited, posture carved from discipline. The storm was about to break. On silent command, the dormant weather arrays, disguised as orbital climate regulators, flared awake. Their mirrored sails angled, and what had seemed to be solar reflectors became weapons. Beams of condensed sunlight lanced through the void, blinding Cadram spear cruisers as if a second sun had risen inside the orbit. Targeting systems flared white, resonance banners distorted into chaos. From the ice fields beyond Neptune, hidden shapes stirred. Frozen asteroids split apart, not by accident but design. Out-crawled barnacle drones, thousands of them, clinging to rock until the moment of release. They swarmed outward, magnetized limbs gripping alien hulls. With diamond drill mouths, they chewed through sensor arrays, leaving ships blind and staggering. Within the glare and confusion, the second wave launched. What had been humble cargo kites scattered in the dark unfolded like blades. Panels snapped into jagged configurations, engines roaring alive. Out of false transports streaked micro-interceptors, manned by pilots whose bodies carried the resilience serum. They twisted into corkscrew dives, enduring 14 G-spins that would pulp another species. Their doctrine was simple: strike where the enemy thought itself safe. They tore into engines, comm relays, weapon mounts, never hulls, never wasted shots. Disable, disrupt, humiliate. Above it all, the ghost relays came online. Every weather station, every disguised node flickered into quantum entanglement. False fleets bloomed across Council sensors, phantom battalions of warships that did not exist. Alien commanders, rigid in doctrine, responded with precision, launching volleys into shadows. Ships fired on allies, confused by contradictory signals. Entire formations rotated to counter threats that were never there. Admiral Calder's voice cut through the storm. Delta II, blind their aft array. Kite Group, collapse the shadow cone. Barnacle Swarm, finish the spine on Sector Green. Each command was modular, crisp, leaving sub-commanders free to improvise. Human crews thrived on that freedom. The Council's response was predictable, rigid orders, transmitted down chains of command. But with sensors blind and comms fractured, those chains tangled. Bronze warforms collided with harvest ships trying to reposition. Ascendant lattice frigates hung paralyzed, their predictive engines poisoned by contradictory data. Hidden within Earth's networks, the Cassiel net unfolded. Unlike alien AIs, logical, deterministic, bound to calculation, Cassiel was heuristic, chaotic, woven to mimic human intuition. It thrived in ambiguity. As the fleets clashed, Cassiel fed signals back into Council channels, injecting small contradictions, orders repeated but altered by a single coordinate, friendly ships tagged as enemies, delays stretched by fractions of seconds that grew into minutes. For the Caedrum, it meant entire spear divisions waiting for confirmations that never came. For the Dravith, trade calculus failed, their harvest ships circling like predators with no prey. For the Illyric, whose lattice engines demanded flawless coherence, the contradictions became poison. Their formations folded in on themselves, machines stuttering into stillness. "Enemy chains are fracturing," reported Yara Mendel from her console aboard Resolute. "Cassiel nets hitting resonance thresholds. They can't reconcile the contradictions." Calder nodded once. "Good, keep the pressure on their minds. Let their hulls collapse second." Neptune's rings, faint and cold, became the canvas of battle. Through them streaked micro-interceptors, their contrails glowing against the distant sun. Sparks burst as barnacle drones shredded another ascendant frigate's sensors, leaving it to fire blindly into empty void. Directed energy lances from orbital mirrors slashed across the field, carving light paths that bent around Neptune's shadow. It was not a battle of brute strength, but of disorientation. Every tactic was designed not to destroy, but to break story, supply, and sight. The phalanx tried to rally. Their warforms surged forward in perfect blocks, banners pulsing to blind. But with engines shredded, they drifted helpless, giant bronze statues adrift in silence. The Combine's harvest ships attempted to retreat, but ghost fleets surrounded them. In panic, they fired into the false, collapsing their own escorts. The Ascendants tried to calculate an escape vector, but Cassiel net twisted probabilities into nonsense. The Council, long accustomed to fighting hierarchies more rigid than their own, had no weapon against improvisation. At the height of the battle, when the Council fleet was faltering but not yet broken, Calder gave a single order. "Transmit!" Across every frequency, a calm voice echoed, President Viga's, pre-recorded but clear. "To the crews of the Council fleets, you are not our enemies. You are prisoners of your own chains. Surrender and you will live. We will not execute defectors. We will not enslave. The choice is yours." For a moment, nothing. Then lights flared, escape pods jettisoned from Dravith harvest ships. Ascendant researchers abandoned frigates, pods spiraling into Neptune's shadow. A few Caedrum crews against doctrine powered down their warforms and signaled surrender. Others refused. Bound by obedience, profit, or cold reason, they fought on even as their fleets dissolved. In the battle's climax, Neptune's rings glowed with fire. Micro-interceptors streaked through the dark, trails of plasma crossing like brushstrokes. Thousands of cold sparks lit the void where drones and hulls collided. Against the backdrop of the gas giant, it seemed as though a second galaxy had been born, an artificial constellation of war. Human voices called out across the comms, crisp and sharp. "Kite 7, pivot! Shadow cones collapsing! Delta 2, aft array blinded, moving to secondary!" Barnacles chewing through their last rig. Mission type orders, improvisation alive in every voice. No waiting for hierarchy, only trust, freedom, and clarity of purpose. Near the edge of the battle, guarded by a fractured escort, the seized transports carrying children drifted. Their signals had been jammed, hidden behind Council shields. Calder's eyes locked on the readings. "Bring them home," he ordered. A squadron of interceptors dove in, weaving through fire, resilient serum keeping pilots conscious as their ships rattled at the edge of destruction. Barnacle drones clung to the escorts, stripping weapons bare. With one last surge, human crews breached the transports, overriding locks, pulling children into safety pods. The images streamed back to Earth, frightened faces, collars broken, freed into light. Humanity's line had been defended. When the last Council flagship cracked under its own contradictions, silence fell. Wreckage drifted through Neptune's orbit, fragments of bronze, sigil, and prism. Some pods blinked signals of surrender, others floated lifeless. The remaining ships fled into dark space, their unity shattered. Operation Tidebreak had ended. Humanity had not just survived, it had rewritten the script of galactic war. Admiral Calder looked over the field, voice low. "They thought we were the wrong enemy. Now they know." On Earth, bells rang across the arcologies. In the belt, families watched children step from transports, safe. Across the colonies, silence gave way to a truth spoken aloud: the Council could be beaten. The cost had been blood, sacrifice, and secrets laid bare. But the moral steel of a people had proven stronger than empires. The wreckage above Neptune still drifted when the interrogations began. Council officers, stripped of their banners and lattice masks, sat in restrained silence. Some sneered, but others broke quickly under the weight of what they had witnessed. One cadre captain, bronze armor cracked, muttered with disbelief, "We thought humans weak. We did not see how you fight for what cannot be bargained." An ascendant scholar, mask shattered, confessed in a whisper, "We had no model for you. We thought no species would risk everything for offspring." Their words spread quickly through the colonies, proof not of victory alone, but of misunderstanding turned to fear. Across the galaxy, sparks ignited. In the methane pits of Kepler 91b, miners once bound by Dravith contracts seized their overseers. Bands that had burned their throats were ripped away, thrown into fires as they claimed the pits for themselves. The rebellion spread across the Combine's holdings, one outpost at a time, until harvest ships fled their own stations. In the heart of the phalanx, murmurs grew into mutiny. Conscripts who had been taught obedience as survival began to question orders. They had seen the defeat at Neptune, seen warforms crippled by enemies who refused to play by their rules. The first uprisings began with units refusing to deploy, then escalated to entire divisions laying down their banners. "Freedom!" they demanded, a word the phalanx had never considered sacred. Among the ascendants, the fracture was quieter but no less profound. Researchers and thinkers, long pressured to surrender identity for lattice unity, defected in groups. They abandoned their spires, taking data and ship designs, unwilling to erase their own histories. For them, humanity's refusal had been revelation, a living example that knowledge did not require the death of memory. In this shifting tide, a new voice entered the chorus. From the edge of Council space, a species of exiles emerged, the Nirathi, beings with fluid, cephalopod-like forms, their bodies shifting color with thought. Long ago, they had fled both Combine contracts and phalanx conscriptions, living in the shadows. They now approached Earth, not with demands but with an offer. "A coalition of equals," their emissary rippled in deep tones. "No crowns, no chains, only choice." President Marisol Vega listened in the council chamber of Nereus, the great Pacific rolling beyond the windows. She sat at the same obsidian table where 5 years earlier she had refused the envoy's ultimatum. Around her were Admiral Calder, Dr. Mendel, Dr. Kavari, and representatives from colonies now hardened into fortress nodes. The children rescued from Kepler played in nearby chambers, laughter carrying faintly through the halls. Vega's words were measured, every syllable heavy. The council sought to fold us into obedience, profit, or erasure. They believed those were the only structures possible. We have shown another path. She gestured to a display hovering above the table, fragments of battle footage stitched into doctrine. 3 lines stood bold: do not match strength, rewire the fight. Break supply, sensors, and story. Mission trust beats hierarchy. This, she continued, is the foundation of Terran doctrine. We do not seek empires. We will not rule others as the Council sought to rule us. But we will defend sovereignty, the right to raise children, to choose memory, to labor in dignity. This is our covenant. Across the chamber, Kavari added softly, our uniqueness was never in weapons. It was in what we defended. They took our children to break us, and instead they revealed the one thing we will never yield. The oath was signed not as a declaration of empire, but as a promise. Earth would aid those who sought freedom, not conquest. The Nirathi pledged their fleets, ascendant defectors pledged their knowledge, and miners from Kepler pledged their strength. The galaxy began to tilt, not toward another hegemony, but toward something fragile and new, cooperation by choice. That evening, as the arcology lights shimmered across the Pacific, President Vega stepped to the balcony overlooking the waves. Families gathered below, their children playing in the tide pools carved between turbines. She raised her hand, not in triumph but in promise. Her words were carried on every channel, simple and final, for the children forever free. The phrase was etched into stone, mounted in every colony and station, inscribed beneath the memorials of the dead. A plaque was placed in the council chamber, its lines unadorned, its message eternal, for the children forever free.